You're listening to Wealthy-esque. We are a community of lawyers who believe that true wealth is having control of our time. I'm Ro Thomas, and as a busy wife, mom, and former Big Law associate, I know all too well the tension between the culture of the legal profession and pretty much everything else you want to do in life. That's why each week I'm bringing you the information and tools you need to improve your money mindset and manage your money to create true wealth. Because ultimately, it's not about the money. It's about the freedom and flexibility the money affords. Hey, friend. Welcome back to the show. I hope you're doing well and having an amazing day so far. Today, we are getting into the second half of your questions. So last week, we talked all about your personal money questions, questions about money in general. So if you missed that one, go back to episode 200 and listen to it. This week is all of your questions about my money situation, about investments that I've made, and about me personally. So we will get into all of those questions right now.
Okay, next question. What money strategy did you make early on that moved the needle the most for you in paying down your debt?
So I think it's two things here. The first one wasn't intentional in that like we weren't on this whole debt journey when we made this decision, but that was buying the house that we got. So when we were house shopping, the bank approved us for like $800,000 to buy a house. And we were like, who's gonna buy something for 800,000? Like we don't have that kind of money. Like at the time I was making, I think like 135, 140. I was a second year associate. My husband was a resident. He was making maybe 50. And they were like, yeah, 800,000. And we were like, no. So we decided to get a loan for 200,000. And that kept our housing cost really, really low. And then on top of that, once we were on this debt journey, we had been contributing the maximum amount that we could to our retirement accounts, but we didn't realize because we started that early on we didn't realize that the amount of interest that we were getting on our loans, especially with my husband's, he had like, it was $360,000 or something like that. So
Oh my
the amount of
gosh.
interest that was accruing on that amount of debt was basically canceling out what we were putting in the retirement accounts. And so we decided to cut back how much we were saving for retirement. We still put in enough because my husband's job offered a match. So we still put in enough where he got the match, which was like if he puts in a certain percentage, then his employer matches it. It was something like 3%. So, we still put the 3% in for him. And then even though my firm didn't offer a match, we put in 3% for me as well. But then all the rest of that money that we had been contributing to retirement, we started putting toward our debt, which helped us to pay it off faster, which meant that we were paying less in interest. So I would say those two strategies, the, house that we bought, not getting the biggest house that we could afford, and then cutting back on some of our retirement contributions helped us move the needle the most with paying down our debt.
I think that's really cool because if I had gotten a new job, taking six figures, I would have got the big house. But I think it's really cool because like a lot of people do that and then yeah, it's cool in the beginning, but then they end up needing you because they're like, what do I do now? All this money is going to my house and I have all this debt and can't pay it or I don't know how to get out of dig myself out of this hole. So I thought it was really wise that you made that decision and fortunate that you started to learn about debt and money so early on that you were able to make that decision. A question that came to my mind while you were answering was, so I know the strategy, but what was like the biggest sacrifice that you felt like you made?
I don't think we made any big sacrifices. I think the sacrifices were more like smaller things, right? So things, for example, like the house or getting, new cars or getting certain clothes or things like that. Like some of the stuff that some of our colleagues were doing, we didn't do early on because we wanted to use that money to get out of debt. So if you can call that a sacrifice, then we did those things. Oh, I guess also, oh, in the same vein as like the trips that we took, right? Like we could have taken nicer trips or gone overseas or, stuff like that. And we did more domestic trips. Part of that too was like having kids and all of the stuff that you need to travel with kids. So it was easier to be able to go places that were closer. But then part of that too was thinking about, do we want to use this money to buy or to pay for, a more expensive trip, or do we want to use this money to pay off, this loan this month? And so we did make choices like that where we thought about the trade-offs with our money of like we could buy this or we could make more progress here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Something else that I was thinking about was when you were talking about how a lot of times people come out and they do buy the big house and all of that. I think that's absolutely right. And a big part of it is that banks basically are lying to people. Not that they're intentionally trying to deceive people or anything like that, but I think the metrics that they use to determine how they're going to lend, it doesn't take into account paying for this house and then also the other things that you would be paying for and living and, all of the other stuff that goes into it. It's basically like, does this payment fit into the structure that you have? Yes. Okay. This is the amount that you can afford. And so I think we have to be prudent in thinking about, okay, if I had this payment, can I also afford these other things that I want to have in life? And for us, it was like, okay, if we had this payment, we would just be sitting in our empty house because we didn't have any money to buy furniture and we didn't have any money to do anything. So that was how we made that decision.
I know you said that personal finance is personal. And I know for some people, it's the shopping, the clothes, and the shoes that they're like, I can't give up. Some people, it's going out, it's the experience, it's the nice dinner. Some people, it's the trips. But what if somebody did want the big house and that was their thing? Is there a way to get the big house and still be able to pay off the debt?
So I think it depends on the person's income and how big the payment on the big house is. Like one of the things that I teach my clients is to try to keep your housing costs to about 25% of your income because that gives you a lot of wiggle room to make progress on debt or to save or to do other things that you want to do, like travel or shop or whatever it is. So I think that it can work. I think when you get beyond the 25%, especially when you have other debt, like a lot of times people will have a car loan or they'll have credit cards or stuff like that, it can get really hard to be able to make progress and pay any of it off because all of this money is tied up in this single bill. So I think if the big payment falls within about 25% of your take home pay, then that's okay. I know that sometimes people are like, oh, it's worth it for me and I'll sacrifice. And I think, that's fine if that's what you want to do. I don't recommend it. But if you wanted to do maybe a little bit larger payment, but then you're going to cut back in some other area so that you still have wiggle room, then, that is completely your prerogative because, like you said, personal finance is personal. But I've found that keeping your payment to about 25% gives you that space that we've talked about a few times here between your income and your expenses, where it's not so much of your income being tied up by this one thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, next question. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing at the beginning of this journey, and only one thing, what would it be?
I think I would tell myself that everything's going to be okay because when things first started, when we first added everything up, all of that, it just felt really overwhelming. There was like, we were not mindful of our finances at all. I mean, like we were mindful to the extent that we weren't like spending everything and overdrafting and, running up credit card debt or whatever. But like we weren't paying attention to how much debt we had and how all the different pieces of our finances worked. And so the first time we did that, and I saw $678,000 of debt and a negative $342,000 net worth, like it felt like a gut punch, which I know I've said before. And so there was a lot of worrying and, thinking about how could we do this faster? How could we pay this off? Like, what else could we cut? Looking at this, looking at that, like a lot of that, like worry and stuff about how to get out of the situation faster. And I think if I could go back and, tell myself one thing, it's like, it's all going to be okay. Cause I think everything worked out the way that it was supposed to. And, I did eventually get to that point where I wasn't worrying. Like, we had a plan, we just kind of lived life and it was fine. But there was a lot of time, especially within that like first year or two, where it was like, oh, I don't know, we need to do this, we need to do that. Maybe we can cut here, maybe we, like all of this worry. So yeah, if I could tell myself that it would be okay, I think that would have helped.
I really love that. I feel like any of us could use that in any aspect of our life, that advice. In the same vein, there's another question that says, if you could do one thing differently on your money journey, what would it be?
I don't know that I would do anything differently on our money journey because I feel like everything happens for a reason. So, the fact that we had as much debt as we did and we had to figure out how to get out of it. Like all of that has led to the person that I am today, you know, and it's led to the work that I'm doing today. Like if I wasn't in that position, I wouldn't have figured out how to do it and started wanting to teach other people how to do it and, you know, started this business helping lawyers with their debt, right? So I don't know that I would do anything differently on my money journey aside from, you know, what I just said about not worrying as much early on.
Okay, so this question gets more into who you are. It says, what has been your best investment in yourself?
My best investment in myself, hands down, has been investing in therapy, investing in coaching, all of that, because those investments have helped me to think about things differently and to see other perspectives that maybe weren't available to me before. And I think being able to think about things in a different way, being able to see things from a different perspective have allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have done before. Because, you know, there was a time where, you know, in my mind, it was like, this is the way that life is. This is just what it has to be. And I couldn't see anything other than that. But getting into therapy, getting into different coaching programs helped me to see that that one perspective that I had is just that, right? It's just one perspective. And there are many other perspectives, many other ways to think about the situation. And so being able to think about things in different ways opened up new possibilities for me that weren't available before. So I would say therapy and coaching have been the best investments that I've made in myself.
That's great. Okay, so next question. What advice would you give your younger 18-year-old self?
I would tell her not to worry so much about what other people think. And it's not so much that I was worried about like what peers and, you know, stuff like that. Like I wasn't so much worried about what other people, like my friend groups and stuff like that thought, but it was more like gaining the approval of like my parents, my grandparents, like my family, like worried about what they
Mm,
thought. And not
yeah.
that that is bad necessarily, but like one thing that I learned, especially in my journey of leaving the law, going into business for myself, like that disappointed some people in my family. And
Mm.
I heard this quote, this woman said something like, if anybody's going to hate your life, it shouldn't be you. And
Ooh,
it's
that's
not that I
good.
hated my life, right? It's not that I hated my life, but it's like I don't need to live my life for these other people to be happy. I need to live my life for me to be happy. And so that's something that I think I would tell my 18-year-old self because I think it's something that I'm learning more now in my 30s, but it's something that could have helped me even earlier on in life.
That is a word on a Sunday. I'm just saying. I love that. Okay. What's something you do that other people would think is weird? I know, no, I'm joking.
You probably do. So
Besides talking about
when
money all the time.
I don't think that's weird, actually. No. So if I go like in a bathroom and they have the shower curtain drawn,
Ah,
like it's
you gotta pull it
closed,
back.
I'll I pull it back to look behind it to like make sure there's nobody behind
I
it.
love that. I do it too, especially at night. I mean, you never know.
Right.
Like I'll
And it's
just
like I
stare
know
at
that's
movies out.
like that's weird, that's random, like why, but that's what I've done that for as long as I can remember. Just like, oh, anybody back there? Like just check in just in case.
Yeah. Or I'm the person that wants the toilet seat down when I flush the toilet.
Oh
And so
yeah. That's not weird.
it's not weird, but some people think it's weird. And so when
Because
I'm
then
in
all the
like,
toilet germs just
I
fly
know,
up in the air.
then when I'm in a public restroom, it's like that fight to get out before it automatically flushes.
Do people think that's weird? I thought everybody did
No, I think
that.
it's a group of people, and we're included in that group of people who do that. But then there's some people who are like, "Why are you putting the toilet seat down?"
Yeah, because I don't want all those toilet germs just flying up in the air with this like whirlpool.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Okay, moving off of toilet germs. Um, chocolate or fruit candy?
Chocolate, of course. So, first of all, I like all candy. I am an equal opportunity candy eater. But if I had to choose one, it would definitely be chocolate. I love chocolate so much more than I love fruity candy. Fruity candy is like, oh, the alternative, like the less desirable alternative. Like, oh, there's no chocolate. I
Ah,
guess I'll go get this, you know, these Skittles or whatever. but chocolate hands down.
I just have two words. Trolley worms. My people are
Absolutely
out
not.
there.
Nobody's out there. It's just you.
They're out there. All right. Have you ever had to fire a client when you were practicing attorney or as a coach? If so, why?
So definitely not when I was an attorney because I was an associate in a big firm. And so that was, way above my pay grade, like what clients we kept or didn't. But I have had to as a coach. And in those situations, it was like they were canceling calls at the last minute or not showing up to calls or not doing the work that we talked about, right? So like, for example, part of the work that I do with my clients is look at their spending and help them to allocate their money in the way that best fits what they want, right? To be more intentional about the things that they want to spend on. And if you don't ever bring your numbers, then we can't do that work. So it's things like that where it seemed like coaching maybe wasn't a priority or it wasn't a good time for them in their lives. And so, I was just like, they weren't saying that to me, but their actions were. And so I just went ahead and ended the coaching relationship because I thought that it would be better for them to come back at a time where it would be a better fit for their lives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this is about your husband. How did you and your husband meet?
Yeah, so we met technically on Facebook the summer before we started college. It was like right after Facebook started letting high school students on. And so I joined around that time, and there were all of these, groups for incoming students at our school. And so, like, we were in those groups, and you connect with the other people, like in your class and all that kind of stuff. And so we technically first met on Facebook, but then we met on campus once we got there, and we were in some of the same friend groups and saw each other a lot and all of that. And so we started dating back then, and the rest is history. Been together coming up on 17 years now.
Shout out to my twin. Okay, and this is the last question. Oh, sad. What's your favorite episode of your podcast? Hmm.
My favorite episode of my podcast is the one where I talk about leaving the law. It's episode 63, and I talk about all of the emotions around leaving and the back and forth that I had. And I just felt like I was really vulnerable in it. And I was really open about the decision and how I made the decision and all of that. And a lot of people have said that it's been helpful for them as they are considering the same thing. So that is my favorite episode of the podcast.
Awesome. What do you miss most about your being an attorney?
The people that I worked with, like there are a lot of people who were really cool. Like we had a really collaborative team. So yeah, I miss those people. There are a lot of people that I haven't really talked to since I left. Like how when you are working together or you're going to school together, like you're in some way like always showing up at the same place, like you see each other all the time. And so like you keep up with each other in that way. But then like when you're apart, you don't. That's what's kind of happened with some of the people I work with, where I just haven't talked to them because I haven't seen them. And so if I had to say one thing that I missed about practicing, I most miss the people that I worked with.
Oh, that's sweet. I'm glad you work with such good people.
Me too.
Well, that concludes it, man.
Well, thank you very much for standing in for the listeners. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, this has been entertaining for you all as you listen, and instead of just hearing me read the questions and then or say my answer. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Of course, of course. And I'm glad I got to say hey to the audience. I listen to the podcast too. What up?
All right. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me. Thank you again for taking the time to submit your questions, for supporting the show for 200 episodes, 201 now. And thank you to my sister Nisha for standing in for you all, for reading out those questions so that we could have a fun conversation and it wouldn't feel boring just listening to me talk. If you haven't done so already, please take a second, subscribe to the show, leave a review. That helps the show get in front of more people so that it can grow, so that we can get this money information in the hands of more lawyers. And as always, I greatly appreciate your support. Here's to 200 episodes, and I am looking forward to 200 more. As we close out, friend, I pray that you take the information you learn here, apply it in your life, and open up to the realization that wealth is available to you. As you do that consistently, week after week, you'll continue to take steps to regain control of your time, build wealth, and live the life of freedom and choice you deserve. Talk to you later.